I told my fiancée take all the time when she told me to move out for a month. So I blocked her, left the ring on the counter, saved the bank alert memo and building access log, showed her signed temporary separation terms at Thanksgiving. And she was placed on administrative leave. The shared calendar popped up on my phone while I was standing in an elevator machine room. A new event sat on next month's grid like a pin in a map. It was titled 1 month space, and the notes said move out by Friday so I can decide. The motor above me hummed and the smell of warm oil hung in the air. I stared at that calendar entry until my eyes went dry. Something told me this was not a request for peace, it was a test of control. My name is Sayer Venn, and I was 39 when she asked for space. I inspect and repair elevators in old buildings and new hospitals across the palace. I open panels, check cables, and test the safety brake to make sure a ride never becomes a fall. We lived in a ground-floor apartment in Pullman, Washington, near a row of maples that dropped leaves like coins. Our place smelled like basil from her countertop planter and lemon detergent from the clean towels. She kept a little ceramic dish for keys and wiped it every night like a ritual. Her name was Isolde Kersey, and she was 38. She worked as a compliance associate at a boutique investment firm in Moscow, Idaho. Her whole job was rules disclosures and not getting caught doing anything that looks wrong. We were engaged, living together, and 2 payments away from a wedding deposit deadline. Her aunt had offered to host Thanksgiving at the family farm outside Colfax, and Isolde acted like that invite was a crown. Everything in our life was a schedule, and I didn't notice how much of it was her schedule. The first time I felt the shift, it was small. She started saying I instead of we when she talked about the future. And every time her phone lit up, she turned the screen away like the light itself was private. Confrontation 1 happened in our kitchen on a Tuesday night. I asked, "Are we okay, or are you pulling away from me?" Isolde smiled softly and said, "I just need space, Sayer." Then she said it clearly like she was ordering a service. "I need space. Can you move out for a month while I figure out if I want you?" I looked at her and replied, "Take all the time you need." She blinked like she expected me to argue. Then she exhaled and said, "Good, so we're on the same page." That line felt like a latch clicking shut. Here is practical advice number 1. If someone asks you to leave your home so they can decide if you are worth keeping, don't negotiate your dignity. Say okay, then protect your life on paper. I didn't beg. I didn't ask for a list of rules like I was applying for a job. I walked into the bedroom, pulled a suitcase from the closet, and started packing. Isolde followed me for a minute with her arms crossed. She said, "You don't have to be dramatic." I kept folding shirts and thought, this is what the safety brake is for. I packed my work gear, my documents, and the framed photo of my late father that sat on my dresser. I left the couch, the dishes, and the little key dish she loved. I also left the engagement ring in its box on the counter because I didn't want anything that tied me to a maybe. That night, I changed my direct deposit account, removed my card from our grocery app, and canceled the automatic utility split. I sent 1 calm text that said, "I'm out. Please email about any lease questions." Then I blocked her on everything before I could be pulled into her mood. I slept in a spare room above a tire shop in Albion that my company kept for overnight calls. The room smelled like rubber and instant coffee, and the heater rattled like it was angry. I stared at the ceiling and waited for regret to show up. Regret didn't come. Only relief did, quiet and strange, and that scared me more than heartbreak. The next morning, my phone buzzed with a bank alert from our joint rent account. A withdrawal hit early, labeled additional month hold. I knew exactly what it was, even before I saw the memo she typed. "Trial month, your share," the memo said. My hands tightened around the phone because I realized her plan was simple. She wanted me gone, but she wanted my money to stay. That was the money proof, and it came straight from her space request. I saved the alert, downloaded the statement, and printed it at work. Advice number 2 is this, simple and boring. Save the receipts while you still feel calm. I called an older lawyer I had met once through a building safety dispute. His name was Carden Pike, and his voice sounded like a man who has heard every excuse and never gets hypnotized by tears. He told me to meet him late, somewhere public, somewhere plain. We met at a 24-hour grain co-op lobby outside Colfax. The air smelled like feed and cold metal, and a TV in the corner played the weather on mute. Carden looked at the bank alert printout and said, "Do not pay rent for a home you are being pushed out of without a written agreement that protects you." He didn't lecture me. He gave me short steps. Notify the landlord in writing. Stop shared payments. Document everything. Then he added one line that stuck. When you test the safety brake, you don't hope it works. You verify. I nodded because he spoke my language. I emailed our landlord that night, explaining I had moved out at my partner's request and wanted to be removed from liability. The landlord replied that any changes had to be signed by both tenants. That was the hook that made my stomach tighten, because I knew Isolde would try to stall. Stalling was her favorite tool. And I could already see the fight forming in her silence. 3 days later, the location proof landed without me chasing it. The landlord forwarded me a building access log after an issue with an extra key fob. The message said, "There are late-night entries from a new fob that wasn't listed on your lease." The access log showed scans into our building at 11:17 p.m., 12:03 a.m., and 12:46 a.m. on nights I was sleeping above a tire shop. It also showed Isolde's fob scanning in right before, like she was escorting someone. I didn't need a name to understand what space meant to her. I saved the access log and wrote one calm email back. I was not residing there on those dates. Please note that. Then I stared at the screen and felt the truth settle in my ribs. I still didn't call her, because I knew what she would do. She would make me the villain for noticing. Confrontation too happened when she finally reached me through an unblocked channel. She emailed from her work address with the subject line lease and rent. The first line said, "You can't just abandon bills because you're emotional." I replied once, short and clear. "I moved out because you requested it. I'm not paying for a trial month while you decide if you want me." Her next email came fast and sharp. She wrote, "So you're punishing me for needing space. That's abusive, Sayer." I read that word abusive and felt heat rise in my face. That flip was the moment I saw the real danger. Here is practical advice number 3. When someone uses heavy words to shame you into compliance, stop debating and move to written boundaries. Feelings can be twisted. Documents are harder to bend. Carden helped me draft a clean notice to the landlord. It stated I had vacated, asked for a lease addendum, and requested a payment split based on occupancy. It wasn't a threat. It was a record. Isolde refused to sign. She insisted I keep paying because I was still responsible. Then she sent a document she wanted me to sign instead. It was a one-page agreement titled Temporary Separation Terms. It demanded I keep paying half the rent and utilities while I lived elsewhere. It also said I could not date anyone during the month, while she would reflect privately. That signed document was going to be her weapon, but she made a mistake. She signed it already at the bottom and emailed it like I would be too scared to say no. I printed it and put it in a folder at my workbench, tucked behind elevator inspection tags. This was the killer receipt, and it came straight from her space request. And I knew it would matter later. A week after I moved out, I ran into her cousin at a hardware store in Colfax. Her name was Maura Kersey, and she was 37, a restoration carpenter who rebuilt old windows like they were worth saving. She saw me in the aisle with a box of screws and said, "You look like someone turned your life off." I should have walked away, but Maura's voice didn't have games in it. It had concern, simple and steady. We talked for 10 minutes by the paint samples. I told her plain that Isolde asked me to move out for a month while she decided if she wanted me. Maura didn't laugh or defend her. She just said, "That's not space. That's a leash." Then she offered to help me move the last of my things so I didn't have to see Isolde alone. That offer felt like someone opening a window in a smoky room. The next night, Mora showed up with a borrowed pickup and 2 moving blankets that smelled like cedar. Isolde wasn't home, which didn't surprise me after the access log. Mora and I carried my last boxes out in silence, and silence felt safe. When Isolde came back mid-load, she froze like she'd been caught stealing. She tried to smile at Mora and said, "Oh, hey, cousin." Mora looked at her and said, "He's just finishing what you asked for." Isolde's eyes flicked to me and her voice turned sweet. "Sayer, you didn't have to take everything." I said, "I'm taking my life, Isolde. You asked for space and I'm giving you distance." She scoffed and said, "It's 1 month, you're acting like it's forever." I thought about the safety break again. Sometimes one test tells you all you need to know. A few days later, Mora and I got coffee at a small bakery in Palos. It wasn't a date, at least not at first. It was 2 people talking like adults without one person trying to win. She asked, "Are you still engaged?" I said, "No, I'm not waiting on a decision about my worth." She nodded like she respected the sentence. A week later, I asked her to dinner. Not because I wanted revenge, because she made me feel seen without making me beg. We kept it quiet at first. Then Thanksgiving came faster than it should have. And Isolde still acted like I was on hold, like I was sitting on a shelf. The communication proof arrived the Monday before the holiday. Isolde sent a text from a new number, bold like she had never been blocked. She wrote, "You can come to Thanksgiving if you behave. We can talk after dinner." Then she added, "Don't make it weird. Remember, this month is about me deciding." I stared at the message and felt my jaw lock. She didn't miss me. She missed control. I didn't reply. I just showed Mora the message and she exhaled slowly. She said, "She's going to explode when she realizes you're not waiting." Thanksgiving Day, Mora and I drove to the family farm outside Colfax. The fields were brown and flat, and the sky looked heavy like a lid. My hands were steady on the wheel, but my stomach felt like it was full of stones. We walked in together, carrying a pie Mora baked. The kitchen smelled like turkey and onions and wood smoke from the old stove. People turned, surprised, then smiled at Mora. Then Isolde appeared from the hallway. Her face went blank, then red, then sharp. She stared at my hand on Mora's back like it was an insult. She said my name like a warning. "Sayer, what is this?" Mora answered before I could. "This is me," Mora said calmly, "and this is him. We're together." That sentence hit the room like a dropped pan. Isolde's voice rose. "You can't do this to me in front of everyone," she snapped. And that was the moment the whole family saw the truth. Confrontation 3 happened in the living room by the old fireplace, after proof, with everyone watching. Isolde started with denial, loud and confident. "I never told you to move out," she said. "He left because he's dramatic." I pulled out my folder, calm, and held up the printed calendar entry screenshot from the shared calendar. Then I held up the temporary separation terms she had signed. The room went quiet except for the crackle of the fire. Then she minimized. "It was just a break," she said, waving her hand. "People do that. I needed time." Her eyes darted around, searching for someone to rescue her. Then she partially admitted when her uncle asked, "Why does this say he can't date while you decide?" Isolde swallowed and said, "Okay, I asked for space, but I didn't think he'd move on that fast." Her voice shook with anger that tried to pretend it was pain. Then the emotional move hit hard and messy. She started crying, big tears, grabbing at the edge of her sweater like she was falling. She said, "You're humiliating me. You're ruining Thanksgiving. You were supposed to wait for me." Mora looked at her cousin and said one line that ended the room's sympathy. "You asked him to live like a backup generator while you played with the power switch." Isolde's face tightened because she knew the family understood that metaphor. Isolde spun toward me and hissed, "So this is revenge?" I said, "No, this is what happens when you treat someone like a trial subscription." My voice stayed low because I refused to become a show. She stormed out to the porch, still crying, still furious. Nobody chased her. That silence was the judgment, and it was louder than any shout. Later that night, her aunt pulled me aside near the sink and said, "I'm sorry." I told her. You don't owe me anything. I meant it too. The consequences came the next week, and they came from Isolde's own choices. She emailed my landlord and my employer from her work account, calling me unstable and accusing me of harassment for showing documents at Thanksgiving. Carden told me, forward that to her firm's compliance officer. Don't add emotions, just facts. So I did. I sent the email, the signed separation terms, and the bank alert memo that showed she tried to bill me for her decision month. A firm that lives on trust does not like messy threats in writing. Isolde got placed on administrative leave while they reviewed her conduct and outside communications. She called from another new number, frantic and pleading now, not sweet. I listened for 3 seconds, then ended the call. In the months after, I moved to a new route in Lewiston and took on a lead role training junior techs. I taught them the same thing I had learned the hard way. You test the safety brake before you trust the ride. Maura and I took things slow because we both understood family storms. One cold evening, we sat in a quiet riverside park in Clarkston with takeout containers on a bench and the water moving dark and steady. She asked if I ever missed Isolde. I looked at the river and said, I miss the idea I built, not the person who asked me to leave so she could decide. Then I added the sentence that felt like my life finally locking into place. When the safety brake proves it works, you stop pretending the free fall is normal. Thank you so much for watching the video. Don't forget to like and subscribe the channel.